And we're live. Welcome to Don't Be Coy. I'm your host, Unkle Lew. And today I have the honor, pleasure, and utmost appreciation to have with me Miss Daniele Hunter. Danielle, thank you for being on the show. How are you doing this evening?
Hi, I'm doing good. Glad to be here.
Okay, that's good. That's good. How was your week?
My week was pretty good. Just still adjusting to the new apartment, but everything is going pretty well.
What's it called? Do you feel like you have everything put together, or are you still kind of decorating and things?
Yeah, it's my favorite part. I get to decorate, and I feel like with my apartment, it's a great blank slate, and I can't wait to get everything together and make it feel like home.
All right. Well, speaking of blank slates, I think it'll be a nice time to introduce yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. Hi, my name is Danielle. I am currently a graduate student studying clinical mental health counseling with a specialization in art therapy. I spend most of my time either creating art for fun or for others, or studying, working towards this licensure.
Oh, okay. Nice. Now, one thing that I really appreciate and that people wouldn't know about you is that you grew up in Hawaii. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, my dad was in the Army, so we were stationed in Hawaii for, in total, about 10 years of my life, but I really only remember the last 7. It was, to me, a really amazing experience, just living on an island, of course, but also being surrounded by the culture and really getting to experience what it really means to live in Hawaii,
Yeah, no, I feel that. I feel like we're going to come back to this a little bit. So, you're getting your master's in art therapy. So, can you describe a little bit of what mental health means to you? How would you define mental health, self-care, and holistic wellness?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really, I like to compare it to physical health. It's something that we all have, and even if we feel okay, it's something we actively maintain, right? So this is why, we use self-care as a way of making sure that we're at a place where we can be present in the things that we're doing. Things like engaging in activities that bring you joy, even play, having time to just have fun and do the things that you really enjoy.
Yeah.
Those are things that we do to maintain our physical health, like how we take care of our bodies, we take care of our mental health.
Yeah. So let's tease on that a little bit. You say taking care of yourself is doing what's fun, or being in that place of total happiness, not necessarily total happiness, but a place of happiness, wellness, things of that nature. So I'm curious to your perspective on the connection between creativity and self-expression, and when you speak about having fun, what does exactly that look like from a creative perspective, or that expressive perspective for someone who's just trying to make that connection between what they do that's fun and what they can do to soothe them for mental health and mental well-being. Because it's once you learn that you can identify something as a tool, then you have to learn how to use that tool appropriately, right? It's you wouldn't hammer in something with a screwdriver, just you don't necessarily want to pound in a screw with a hammer. Each tool has its purpose. So it's I'm curious to your perspective on when someone has that creative outlook or that expressiveness that they realize makes them happy, how can they use that as a tool for their mental health?
That's a great question. And the beautiful thing about being humans, are so complex, is so many different ways that we can be creative. I think in some ways we as a society maybe have limit what you in order to be creative, you have to create something that others can objectively look at and be that's nice.
Yeah.
That's kind of how we define it. But to me, really creative expression is the ability to take something that is non-tangible and making it a tangible thing. And the creativeness is what happens in that process. So not necessarily that product that you created, but how you felt while you were engaging in that process. Was there a feeling of ease? Was there a feeling of joy? Did you feel an excitement of what that final product might look like, or even if the final product is a journey and it takes time? Are you being compassionate with yourself as you maybe make mistakes and you have to correct them, and then you get to see how you're creative and engaging in how we fix it? It really, to me, the way we engage in the creative process speaks to a lot of how we engage with the things that happen around us. And it's almost like practicing it. Yeah. Like stretching your muscles before you run. You're getting an opportunity to be with yourself in process of something that you enjoy. And I don't know, it translates so well to how we engage with the world around us.
Yeah, no, I really like that, especially how so like, for me, I see how that can articulate from a business perspective. Like you have like a capital budget, and then you have like an operational budget. And your operational budget, manages like your day to day, essentially. Like if we're gonna make the analogy from like a human perspective, it's just like, or mental health perspective, it's just like your average day, like your life, going to work, whatever that might look like, the mundaneness. And like capital accounts, the only way that you can use something to spend on something with capital funds is if a good business practice is if it retains an asset towards the operations. So like what I'm hearing you say is, it's like a part of that creative process is more than just like, oh, okay, like I'm about to paint this and then this is what I created, but it's also the process of creating that takes you to another level, that adds value to your day to day, if that makes sense. It kind of essentially spans you. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, definitely. It's how does that fuel you? What do you get from that process?
Yeah. Okay. So like, I guess that's a really good segue to how does art do that for you, right? Like, you're studying art therapy. So it's like, obviously there's a connection there, and we can go into that if you would like to. But then there's also just your self-expression of art. Like you've chosen to let your own personal passion like also be your career driver as well. And so I'm like really interested in around how art became that for you.
Yeah. I think it started as a really young, like as a kid. I come from a military family, so sometimes we moved every 2 to 3 years. And every time we moved, my mom would take us to the store, take us to the craft section, and be like, get one thing. And I'd take that thing home. Sometimes it was latch hooking. Sometimes it was just these like little 3D sticker boards. And I would find so much joy in seeing the picture, seeing all these pieces, and figuring out how to put them together to get that product. And it was just, the process was so enjoyable. Yeah. And I don't know, I went to college, took a Gen Psych class. It was like, oh my gosh, I don't know, something just clicked for me. Yeah. And through studying and then also reflecting on my personal experiences and uses of art, I was like, there's something to being able to pair psychology and art that I feel could help people like go towards wellness.
Can you like explain some of the practices like that you're learning, or like the applications of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're learning a lot about understanding about art materials and the different kind of emotions or feelings that it kind of can bring upon. Like we have something called the expressive therapies continuum, and it talks about the different senses we have: perception, affect, cognitive, kinesthetic, all of those ways that we engage, and like which art materials can cause you to be calm, feel a calm, like watercolors.
Yeah.
A very fluid material can bring a sense of calmness. So if you have someone maybe that is experiencing anxiousness, maybe you could use watercolors in your intervention.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to learn like how to not only say we're going to make this thing, but like here are the art materials that we can use to help you achieve your goals.
Yeah. So let me ask you this then. So like what I'm hearing you say is like art therapy in a sense not only addresses like one side of an individual, like the cognitive side, but it also can engage like if someone is like, I don't know how one would call it, but like, you know, like a visual learner or someone that likes to do more things with their hands, it can engage like that aspect of an individual as well through like different like mediums of art. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. Art therapy really gives an opportunity for the therapist and the client to engage in really nonverbal communication too. So there's a lot that you get. Like maybe more something that someone wasn't consciously aware of that you can get from engaging in art materials that you might not get to through just talk therapy alone.
So when you say talk therapy, is that same thing as like cognitive behavior therapy or?
Yeah, well, cognitive behavioral therapy is one of the theories that we use, and they have actually adapted it to fit, to use art materials as well.
Yeah.
And then talk therapy is just like the form of therapy where you sit across from your therapist and have more of a conversation. With art therapy, it takes in different forms. Some are in studios and are in art studios, or some are on school campuses, and it's just where you're engaging in art materials as a way of treatment.
Yeah, I feel that. Is there a particular population that you want to serve?
Yeah, I want to focus on more of a preventative mental health. How do we get people to kind of their baseline? So like when life happens, they have the tools and the resources to be able to not have those typical life experiences completely change their lives.
Yeah.
And so I really want to focus on early childhood, ways of teaching about emotions, about how to deal with emotions, how to deal with conflict resolution, making sure that they have resources such as basic needs, food, water, nutrition, so that when they become adults, you know, they have the tools and the resources and the confidence to do what they desire to do in adulthood.
Yeah, so I'm curious on like what that would look like, because I can see this on like so many different levels, right? I can see this at the policy level where, you know, you instate that at all elementary schools, they have to have some type of art therapy associated with their classroom curriculum or something of that nature. I can see it becoming a part of like standard, I guess you could say like standard behavior like we do for children now, where if they go to a primary care provider, they're getting like all their shots, the boosters, all those kind of things. And like, would art therapy be one of those things engage with it? Like, or like, would somebody say like on another end of the spectrum, like, okay, I'm going to take my child to an art therapist, similar to like nowadays, if you want your kids to be really good at like a certain sport, you bring them to that type of camp early on in their life. So like, you know, I don't know if it's like painting this picture for you, but like I'm seeing many different avenues of this application. And like, I'm curious around like how accessible can this be, right? You know, because I'm sure that there's a lot of disparities amongst different communities when it comes to like mental health, even the recognition of mental health, right? But like, how can you apply what I'm hearing you say? Not really like you know, you went through life and, you know, this is going to be this is going to be the form or the tool I'm going to use to help you navigate it, but more so to create like that baseline to say like, you know, how, not necessarily how does this make you feel, but like, how can you use this as a way of expressiveness? Similarly, as a way to cope through when things do come, because life is going to happen. That's inevitable. So I'm curious around like just your thought for how this can be applied to, like, how do you see this in practice?
Yeah, I definitely think that is something, I mean, throughout this, you know, because I'm still just a student, I'm still just a trainee, I've been really deeply thinking about, because you're totally right. Even within mental health right now, there's such a gap in accessibility between marginalized communities. Whether there is stigma around going and seeking out mental health care, or even when you want to seek out mental health care, you come to barriers with insurance not wanting to cover that, or covering very limited amounts or very specific amounts, and only if you have a diagnosis, covering your care. And even then you can get denied care. But then even if you do end up having insurance that works for you and you are of a BIPOC community, it is so hard to find a counselor that can just get it on a level that you feel comfortable and that is culturally accessible for you. So accessibility is something I take deeply into consideration, especially when working with a population, children, specifically BIPOC children, that are at a very vulnerable and developmental stage in their life, just really making sure that they have access. And I think a way to reach them is through the school system. That's kind of where I'm landing right now, is meeting with them where they're at, where they have to be, and making sure that no matter what their income level of that property surrounding the school, that these human beings deserve access to mental health care.
Yeah.
And they deserve to have an adequate amount of care on the school campuses to make sure that we meet the needs of the students by not only providing mental health care, but also making sure they have food, they have water, where we're meeting the needs of the children, their basic needs along with their mental health needs. That's kind of how I see it coming in.
Yeah. So how can something like art therapy be accessible to someone who is of a lower socioeconomic status? Mm-hmm.
And this is something where the field, I feel, has really been faced with figuring out when COVID hit, because we had to go to telehealth. And versus where we're able to get grants and ways to pay for and buy art supplies, and they've really varied. We had to get creative on what is something someone is likely to have, paper and pencil, you know, and how do we use that to still get and engage in the therapeutic aspect of using art materials.
Yeah.
And so like a part of being an art therapist is being creative and being able to meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
You know, because that's where the change comes. That's where the healing comes.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. I totally get that. So like, I guess going back into that question of like applications and things of that nature, like how have you put your type of therapy into your own life? Like how do you practice your own version of like art therapy?
Ooh, I think I'm still figuring it out. It's very much, I think of it developmentally, right? Like each age, each move, each place that I'm at, as my life circumstances change, so do my needs. So
yeah.
I have to evolve my practice to meet me where I'm at. And with me just having a new move, I'm definitely at the place where I'm exploring what that means. What are my needs? And then how can I use what I have to fulfill those needs?
Yeah, but you say that so not necessarily casually, but like kind of casually, because that's something that you recognize, right? Like you recognize that, okay, I'm in this place of change, and therefore my said routine probably won't be the same. My needs won't be the same. So it's like, what's it called? Is identifying that your needs have changed. Did it something that you recognize by keep on trying to do the same old thing and it doesn't feel the same? Or is it just like an innate instinct where your desires change, your wants of like what gives you comfort change? So like, how did you, I guess you could say, get to that moment?
Yeah, it's really in self-reflection. I'm a thinker. So I remember even growing up, going through middle school, I would like reflect on the year and think about what I did or what happened to me and how that shaped where I am right now. And like, so I kind of practiced that, but that's really something we all access, right? Being able to just reflect like, okay, in this moment, there's something feels off. Okay, what is that? Okay, maybe I'm feeling anxious. Why is that? Oh, because you're in a whole new city. You know, like just being able to take a moment to stop and reflect on what is going on in me, and then what can I do with that information? I know that I love trees, so I can go take a walk.
Yeah.
I know that my cat just brings me joy, so I could just bring out the laser pointer. And there's things that I can do. I could paint. I can go do art nights with friends. Like there's things that I can do to help me when I can recognize what I'm trying to help.
Yeah. Okay. So like in art therapy and the application of that, like how would you coach someone to do that type of said reflection? Like, is it drawing out like a moment in time? Is it like how does art therapy apply in those kind of situations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have to give my favorite answer, and it says it depends on who sits in front of me and what their needs are, what they feel comfortable using. But that kind of is using art materials and reflecting on topics. Instead of saying, hey, tell me about this really hard time, I could be like, draw what colors, shapes come to mind when you think of something associated with that. And we can explore more so of what that product means versus having you talk about it about yourself. I don't know, there's something about it being externalized that it feels safer to go there, you know, and you gain a deeper insight of what's there. So that's kind of what you use art materials, you use what is most accessible to the person to help them gain deeper insight through thinking about things in a completely different way. Yeah.
So I'm curious, and I might pivot the conversation a little bit. So like, does this essentially mean that like when you ask someone that like, hey, reflect on the situation, how did it feel? Like draw this for me, or like give me some like colors or whatever, or something of that nature. Does that mean that certain colors are associated with certain emotions? Like, how does that work?
And full disclosure, like this is just my understanding of what I've researched so far, but so this is just my interpretation. But I don't think there's much like interpreting that's happening there, you know, because who am I to tell you or to say that's true, that color means that to you, right? We're all so different. So like what the meaning that the client would assign to it is what matters, you know? Like I can't be like, oh, I see you drew 3 ducks and 2 trees, so clearly you have a phobia of ducks. Yeah. I can't make that assumption. But if they say, oh yeah, like when I was younger, we used to go to a pond and there were always ducks and they make me happy, like that's the meaning that that's the insight that they're gaining. Yeah. Like, oh hey, I drew that because that brings me joy. Yeah. Yeah. Huh.
I'm curious. So, like, share with me, like, we talked a little bit about, like, you being in Hawaii and things of that nature. So, like, do you mind sharing with me, like, one of your favorite memories from that?
There's There's so many. But I guess my favorite memories would be anytime me and my family went to, there's a military cabin beach called Unkle Lew. And anytime we went there, I don't know, I just always have like memories of watching the sunset and just being on the beach and going to eat. And it was just fun. We just played Uno, we barbecued, those were some of my favorite moments of, I don't know, just having such a beautiful place to just be with my family.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. How's that feeling now, being so far away from them and stuff? Like, I know, like, your family's very important to you, and like, you're also in the pursuit of this career, right? Like, because I'm assuming that art therapy isn't something that's everywhere, is it?
I feel like it's fairly new.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's just like, you have to go to specialized schools to get that kind of training, to get that which I think is also really cool. Like, as somebody who went to a liberal arts school, it's like math and science. There's only, I have to be a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, but like, to find this kind of like specialized training, and then also put yourself in a situation where you take yourself from your family. Like, do you feel like as you've grown as an individual, and you were saying, like, as it depends on the phase in your life, like your needs may change and things of that nature, do you feel like that favorite memory where you highlighted your family, like, is that something that is still like a very key, how would you say, driver for you, or like foundational pillar? Would you say that?
Yeah, like it's kind of the memory that like grounds me. Like it's very grounding. Like, okay, I don't know. I think about it and it brings me peace. It's like I can almost access the joy I was feeling when I was there. Like, our memories are just so, like, if you, like, when I, moving here and being close to the Pacific Ocean and like being able to go and smelling that water, like, it brings me to that time and that memory. Like, it's a very grounding memory for me. So that's kind of why I always hang on to it. Yeah.
That's very beautiful. And I like the fact that I would have never made that connection between, like, you being in a faraway land, because your family, they're now in Texas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like, with most of your family being in Texas now, and like, you being far away from there, like, the ocean is technically still the same. And so it's just like, yeah, it's a little bit different, but still having that kind of grounding memory. So like, let me ask, is that something that is usually talked about a lot in therapy, having like a grounded memory? Like, I've never heard that kind of language before.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that was like an insight I gained moving here and being, that was something I just picked up. Sorry, what was your question again?
No, it's all good. Like, grounded memories, is that so when I say, like, is that like a therapy thing, I guess is what I'm asking, is, like, how is that something that you identified that was going to be something that you would need, right? Like, whenever you come, I guess you could say, come to a new place or going through a new change in your life, and you're like, there's sure to be moments of it that aren't necessarily the most desirable, right? But like, you find things in your past that make you happy, and then dissect that and be able to plug that into like whatever your current situation is. Because I never personally would have ever thought to been like, oh, I'm in, literally, if I was you, I'm in Washington, Pacific Ocean, Hawaii, Pacific Ocean, same thing. Like, make that connection between the two, and like use that as a point to say, like, oh man, like, that really brought me happiness. Like, Is that like a therapy technique, or is that something that you just practice yourself?
I feel like that's something I just practiced myself, but I could totally see that depending on like someone's theoretical perspective, being able to connect your past to your present, I definitely think is something people can use. It's definitely if it works for them, if that's what that person would need.
I was about to say that could go really bad depending how your past would be. But like, there's something about like being present and like finding something that makes you joy and taking a snapshot of that, you know, like whether it's like a screenshot or something of like that, of that nature, but like taking your screenshot of your life to say like, hey, like, I really like this moment. I might need it later. Yeah. Like, I really like how our body just does that for us. Like really tries to take care of us and things of that nature. Huh.
It really does. Yeah. And I would say that that's something you have done too. Like when we went to the sand dunes, like it was that concept that you mentioned of this is a place like when you're having a hard time to remember just being in a place where you can just relax.
Yeah. No, that is very true. I think that, for me, that's actually been something really hard to do, like these past couple of weeks, these past couple of years, really. These past 2 years have been like really, really crazy. And like, I think that one of the things for me personally is that I've really engaged with my mental health and really engaged to say like, this is going to be a priority for me and something that I'm going to, quote, take seriously. And for that, like, I feel like I pressed a reset button. It's not like, oh, okay, I'm just going to focus on my mental health and like now I'm all good. And it's just like, I'm going to do this, that, and the third and everything's okay. Recognizing certain behaviors, recognizing certain trends, aligning that to my goal, realizing that certain behaviors do not align with said goal is like a whirlwind. It literally rocked my world. And learning how to, I guess you could say, develop those new, like, not necessarily coping strategies, but like toolkits. And those new tools and developing those new mechanisms to bring me to that point of peace. It's really been a very transformative thing. Like, that's why when you say about self-reflection, and like we talked about like the sand dunes, or like even whenever you came into this new place, like the importance of that, and like, you know, that's always been like a reoccurring theme, just to be able to pause and just take it all in. And I think it's something about, like, for example, the sand dunes, like you brought up, like just that quietness that came with it. And like, you know, as the as the famous like quote goes, it's like, peace be still. You know what I'm saying? And finding that contentment in that peace when you're like at that still moment. That's been a journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely been a journey. I would definitely say that. I don't know necessarily about you, but like for me, just the idea that this was going to be something that I would have to take care of is like wild to me. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, it's like, not to say like adulting is hard, because I don't want to prescribe to that, but it's like there's a lot of things that we take for granted as in our youth that we don't necessarily realize are like stepping stones to things. And it's like there's really no necessarily break from it because life never stops. So it's like, in order for you to find that peace and to be able to get to that point of happiness or whatever, you have to take that reflection and recognize where you are, understand your current state, and assess the situation and move forward. It's a wild process, man.
It really is. And I think it's a practice, you know? Yeah. And I think this is why, you know, I choose the population I want to work with, is because it's something that we can only practice if we're taught. It's not just...
Yeah, no, because you don't want to be 30 years old and just, you know, I can't say that I don't know who I am, because I'm very confident in knowing who I am as an individual. But like, when life hits you and knowing what you need to do, and knowing what you need to do in a healthy manner that helps you get to that is a practice, right? Because, you know, we all had to crawl before we walked, literally. Yeah. Like, no one came out just like, I got this. Yeah.
And before that, we had to have belly time. We had to have tummy time. Yeah. And we had to practice that back muscle. Like, from the moment that you are in the womb, there are things that we're doing that we are practicing. You know, you get your heartbeat, because that needs to practice, because that needs to be able to sustain outside of the womb. That's something you'll need lifelong, right? Like, learning how to care for ourselves is a muscle we have to work. Yeah. It's necessary. Yeah. Learning how to be in community with others is a muscle we have to work. It's something we have to practice.
So, like, I don't regret going on my self-care journey. I don't regret my mental health journey at all. But, you know, sometimes it's not pretty, just like practice. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, some people, they just are naturals at it seems like. And they just have all these different things going on. But I make this analogy with, like, basketball. Like, some people, when they first started playing, like, their dribbles were not the prettiest thing, but through practice it gets a little bit better. Like, how does one, like, begin to start this journey? Go to the practices. Don't get discouraged when they either mess up at practice or you know, have a bad day at practice, or like it just does not look cute.
Yeah, because this journey is messy. It has its beautiful moments, but a lot of times you have to get through some really tough moments to get to those beautiful moments. And I think, to answer that question, I'm landing with everything I'm learning these past, because I've been studying psychology since 2012. So I'm really landing
10 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
That makes you an expert in the field now, huh? 10 years of experience, a decade.
And I feel like I've only, like, barely scratched the surface. Yeah. Because we are so unique. Yeah. And that is one of the most beautiful things I think about humanity. And so, like, the way you heal will not be the way I heal. Because what I went through and what I'm having to heal from is not what you went through or what you're having to heal from. Yeah. And so there's, I don't know, of being able to see that our journey is going to be unique. And that is this hard, because we want to be able to say, okay, they did this and this worked, therefore I'm going to try to do that and that works. That could be a way to try to figure out what works for you. Yeah. But, like, it's not going to look the same. Yeah.
And recognizing that, like, in this practice, that it's not always going to look the same for every single body. And, like, I guess you could say, pay attention to yourself. So do you purposely give yourself, like, self-time? You know, I know, like, you know, like, technically, like, you live alone, but it's just like, well, it's not technically, you do, besides Daisy, the cat.
She's important.
Exactly. Daisy is important. But, like, you know, technically, you have your alone time, but like, do you purposely say like, I'm not doing chores, I'm not studying, I'm not friend time, I'm not family time, I'm not sitting here thinking about whatever else, I'm just gonna focus on self time? Do you designate that, or do you like find the ebb and flow in the day and just try to make sure that you keep your cup full throughout?
Great question. Well, for me and how I am, I have to intentionally seek like and engage in community. That's something I have to work on because I have a tendency to isolate. Like that's my comfort zone, is being by myself in my off in my little corner. And so, but what I'm landing on is like how important engaging and healing in community is.
Yeah.
Because like we said, it's messy. And there are times, I think community is so important because if we feel like we're in life, it's going to bring challenges that make us fall. Like, it's so great to have people who you can trust to catch you.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much value in having a community that you can heal amongst.
Yeah.
You know.
No, that's I really like that, because it's like just kind of what you were saying, like, and setting up those foundational skills and having that practice. Like, do you find yourself going out more, or like what does that look like, particularly for you in the sense of building community?
Yeah, specifically for me, because I'm